Hello and welcome to Thinkpodpowered by the FII Institute. For more than 30 years, I led Sky News' coverage of global events, holding to account the politicians and change makers shaping the world of today. In this series, filmed at the 6th Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, I've got the opportunity to question those shaping the future. At this inflection point in our history, how can we ensure that the future is one of prosperity and opportunity for all? This episode, I'm joined by the Nobel Peace Laureate Leymah Gbowee, renowned for her ongoing struggle for women's rights and her work in leading a women's peace movement that brought an end to the Second Liberian Civil War.
The fight is for peace, the fight is for women's rights, but most importantly, the fight is for our collective humanity.
At a moment where divisions are rife, Leymah is a shining example of the power of the collective to implement change. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Nobel Prize winner for Peace in 2011. Congratulations on that. But I get the sense the fight goes on.
It's on. Even in this moment, it's on. It's never ending. I think the prize increases the fight because now there's lights, there's cameras, there's a lot of expectations. It's a lot. And so you have to keep going. And for me, I consider myself blessed to be one of those individuals who continue to work at the local level, at the grassroots, at the national, then the regional, and then international. So it's a constant going up and down the ladder, going up and down the ladder, but then it's constantly having fresh issues to bring at the international level to say, hey, you're missing this. These are things that we need to talk about. So it's a fight.
And what is the fight for?
For me, the fight is for peace. The fight is for women's rights. The fight is for girls' education. But most importantly, the fight is for our collective humanity. I mean, we've come to a place where I've recognized long ago, because I grew up in that social setting, that we swim or we sing together. And the world seems to have forgotten that, the whole conversation around community, the whole conversation around just the word that is the guiding word for this conference, humanity. That's the fight. We are in a place and a time where there's so many inventions. Everything can do everything, but then we're more miserable than ever before. There are more poverty and more wars and more devastation than ever. So I think it's time for us to sit and say, whilst we're more intelligent in terms of innovation, we need to change that around and be more intelligent in terms of humanity.
And in terms of one half of humanity, women.
Yes.
Are we going forward there across the world, do you feel?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Someone asked me about progress the other day. Do you think there's progress? And the way I measure progress is that I have 9 children, 6 daughters and 3 sons. And the way I measure progress is that there are certain things when I was growing up, we didn't have in my community. Like, for example, growing up, I always questioned my grandmother why men would beat their wives. And when the police came, what we heard, can you take it inside? You are becoming a public nuisance. So in my growing up years, I never saw a man get arrested for beating a woman. I only saw them being chastised for disturbing public peace. Today, men are being arrested and taken to prison because there's a law. We never had a law on rape in Liberia. Today there's a law on rape. It's a non-bailable offense. You do 12 to life if you're accused of rape and you're prosecuted and found guilty. When I started this work that I'm doing 20-something years ago, you couldn't talk about FGM publicly. The powers that be would threaten to take you to the sandy bush where FGM is practiced. Today, FGM is on the floor of Parliament. Yes, it's still happening, but we are talking about it on the radio. It's no longer a hush-hush. So it depends from what perspective you're looking at progress. Internationally, I would say that there's a lot of talk and very little action.
And what about we're in the Islamic world here in Saudi Arabia, of course, in Iran at the moment, there are the protests going on,
Yeah.
led by women
Yeah.
against the hijab. How do you feel about the attitude towards women across the Islamic world?
There is a need for more progress. There's a need for a lot more, and I don't want to misspeak because this is not my context, but I think especially for a place like Iran, when someone is killed for wearing a hijab slightly, in a slack manner, that's horrible. And that the women are standing up is commendable. But you see, one of the things that I know from being an African woman and being in a space where there's a lot of stereotype amongst our being, people don't see the strength because it's not on Sky News or BBC or Al Jazeera. But in those communities, every day there are protests going on. Every day there are women challenging structures. And I want to believe that it happens in communities here in the Arab world. So not to judge, I think it's time for all of us who think, or those who think that women are suffering and they don't have a voice in some of these communities, they need to go there. The other thing that I want to say, because it's almost like I'm speaking oxymoron, that is bad here and then it's good there. A lot of the resources that people are talking about when it comes to gender equality, women's rights, remains up there. New York, Paris, and all of the different places. Those resources are not filtering down to where the actual work is happening. But even in the absence of those resources, women are still doing what they need to do because it is their insurance policy. I will still go back to Liberia and advocate for that little girl who suffered FGM, regardless of funding from anyone, because it is my daily reality, and I want to be in a space or be able to say that there are 10 other Leymah Gbowees in my community.
I mean, I'm interested because it's been a feature of Christianity, of Judaism, of Islam as well, this idea of getting women to cover up. How do you feel? Do you feel that women will only be truly equal when that's not an issue?
I don't think anyone should have any authority over anyone's body. And I'm a radical feminist. There's no if, but, or however with my feminism. And where I come from, there are rules, there are laws for women, but I've never really been one to abide by any of those rules. I speak when I want to speak. I say whatever the hell I want to say. And so I have gained a reputation as being one of those very loose women. I'll tell you a quick story. Several years ago when the president of Egypt, this is in 2006, Mubarak was president, his wife Suzanne then sent for a group of activists to go to Egypt, and they were doing this conference, big conference on women, blah, blah, blah. So there were a few of us who were really radical. One day we got into a car and went around. Whilst we were sitting, drinking, having fun in a little bar, this man came and said something to one of the girls who was Jordanian. She said something back to him. And he said, I pity your husbands. And we said, we don't have any. And he said, that's why you don't have any, because you women will never find husbands. But the point that I'm trying to make from that story is, if the yardstick of progress for any woman is abiding by the rules that society has set, if you go to the Bible, if you go to the Quran, if you go to all of our religious books, there is nothing in there that prohibits women from having their full potential. People misquote these scriptures for their gains. And I'm one person who resists it because I'm a Christian. Jesus' friends were women. And so there's nothing any pastor can say to me that will make me to not speak my. So I don't think covering up makes a nation decent. I don't think wearing anything makes a nation better. And I don't think doing that is going to move any nation forward. I think it's time for people to let women be. Like I said this morning, we're seeing with one eye cover. By restricting women, you are not getting the fullest potential. Don't you get exhausted as a man trying to do everything?
Well, I think women are fairly liberated in the UK.
Fairly is not good enough. And I think it's time for us to break all of those things so that our world can fully function in a way that is supposed to function. You don't want your daughters near me, right?
I got 3 daughters. They're all doing well. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
In these turbulent times, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Thinkpod for more insight and analysis.